Hello everyone, Richard Bradley here with On Track GP. Hope you all had a good weekend and here to talk to you about the Monaco Grand Prix. We all wanted rain in Monaco and we got it to a certain extent. Very tricky conditions, a big strategic battle and some incredible driving skill on display. Max Verstappen taking another win, increasing his championship lead to 39 points ahead of Sergio Perez, who had a nightmare of a weekend. But yeah, talking points from the race. Obviously, it was a typical Monaco race at the beginning. Alonso couldn't quite keep the pace with Verstappen, which I think is what we all expected. But then when the rain came in the last 20 laps, things got very, very interesting. Now, just to put it into perspective, when you're in these conditions, the number one thing that you need is temperature. As long as you keep temperature in your tyres and in your brakes, then you're generally okay until the rain becomes too much. However, if you lose that temperature, then forget it. You have no grip at all. So even though it looks like it's raining and you might think, okay, I want to pit early, as long as you can keep the temperature in the tyre, it can actually sometimes be better to hold off and just see if it dries out. Now, obviously, Aston Martin made a complete blunder with Alonso's because he made the perfect call and went to box, and they put a set of medium tyres on him, and then they had to box one lap later for the intermediates. Now, this was apparently due to a radar issue from the Aston Martin side, thinking that the rain would clear up. In the end, it didn't really affect Alonso too much. I think Max, if he needed to push, probably would have been able to hold him off. And the other thing is, it's one thing to catch somebody, but to actually pass him on a circuit like Monaco, I couldn't see Max losing that, to be honest. You know, he looked so strong and he was just composed the whole time. As we've already mentioned though, Max getting that win 39 points ahead of Sergio Perez, that's a huge number when there's only 25 points for a victory. I know the season's long and we've got a long way to go, but this was the first time we've seen Perez buckle a little bit. It almost looked like he was feeling the pressure, you know, the crash in Q1. Now, what happens normally in qualifying, especially when you have multiple shots at it, on a circuit like Monaco where you know your car's good, you generally put something in that's called a banker, which is a lap where you know you'll be pushing, but you'll be safe, and you just make sure that you don't make any mistakes. You know, when you get to sort of Q3 and you've got a bit of a guaranteed good position, you take a bit more risk because you have to as well. But Perez's position, it would have been wiser for him to get that banker lap in and then push for a good time after that, and so that then he can make mistakes, and the consequences, provided he doesn't crash, won't be as bad. But it's very easy to say, but for drivers to actually do that is very difficult, and I'm guilty of having done it myself before. Actually, when I had a car good enough for pole once, I binned it on the first lap and qualified last. But then, of course, in the race, having to start from P16, having the touch with Stroll coming out of the tunnel, he then clipped Magnussen, he collided with Russell at Mirabeau. You know, that's for me is the signs of a frustrated driver who was frustrated with the position that he was in. But of course, that was all done through that one mistake in qualifying. Now, could he get back to how he was before? Yes, but I think Max is now starting to look very, very strong, and it's going to be very, very difficult for him. Carlos Sainz also had a very poor race. He clipped Ocon in the opening laps coming out of the tunnel. He had the spin in the rain, eventually finishing P8, of course, as well. He had the crash in practice. And as I said in the preview for this race, on a street circuit, it's all about getting those laps, and especially at the beginning of the weekend. And when you do lose track time because of a crash, it knocks your confidence, you lose the comfort that you have with the car, with the circuit, and it just puts this little doubt in your mind for the rest of the weekend. And I think we saw that from Sainz. And then Ferrari's tactics being called into question again with the timing of the boxing for Leclerc. Now, I'm actually on Ferrari's side with this, believe it or not. I think that there's always going to be a debate with strategy, but he would have, you know, if Leclerc had boxed when he wanted to box, he would have lost a track position to Hamilton. And we all know how hard it is to overtake in Monaco. So for that reason, I'm going to side with Ferrari on this one. Magnussen retiring, going straight on at the first corner, Stroll retiring, and I think it's probably an easy position for Stroll when you look at the structure of Aston Martin as a whole. But when your teammate is doing the things that Alonso is doing, it's got to be putting him under a bit of pressure. You know, there's always been this marker around Stroll that he's only there because of the resources behind him. And, you know, now he's up against one of the greatest of all time, who's clearly performing, and to be honest, is probably looking favourite to be second in the championship with the way things are going at the minute, unless Sergio can get himself back. So I think that's going to start getting to Lance. Obviously, at the beginning of the year, he had the excuse with his hand, and I think he did a remarkable job in Bahrain because of that. But when you're up against someone as good as Alonso, there's no doubt that it will start winding him up and it will start getting to him and becoming a burden. So it'll be interesting to see how Stroll goes, whether he just stays consistently average in the position he is now. Because if you actually think about it, if Aston Martin didn't have Alonso in the car, you wouldn't say they were miles better than last year. They'd be good, but not great. Speaking of cars, it was quite interesting because there's a rule inside Formula One where the teams, because now with the ground effect cars that we have, there's so much aerodynamic detailing on the underside of the car, which is where all of that downforce is generated. And when people bring updates, it's mainly on the floor. Normally on circuits, there's a rule where the extractors can only extract the car in a certain way so that people can't see underneath the car. Obviously, Monaco, you have the constraints of being in a city, so all these teams bought their brand new floors, new updates, and straight away, because the Mercedes had the incidents, the Red Bull had the incidents, the cranes lifted them up, and there's pictures of all their hard work going all over the world. I think Toto Wolff described it as Cirque du Soleil, and all the teams will have professional photographers, will have professional image enhancers, etc., etc. And I promise you now, they'll be back at their factories enhancing these images and looking at every detail on those floors. So if you just spend a lot of time and a lot of money on making these updates and that happens, yeah, I can understand Toto's frustrations, to be honest. But Red Bull now 129 points ahead of Aston Martin. I mean, let's be honest, the Constructors' Championship is done. That's Schumacher, Ferrari levels of dominance. I can't see that changing, to be honest. Obviously, I think it will be I think at the minute on current form, Alonso's looking very good. Could possibly get second in the Drivers' Championship, especially if Aston Martin's upgrades work well. But the Constructors' Championship will be a done deal. An interesting one as well, looking towards the back, further down the grid, Nick de Vries, a man under big pressure, had a lot of comments from Helmut Marko saying how he's on a yellow card and he needs to improve, and Nick coming out and saying he understands it himself, and he rose to the occasion. He was very close to Tsunoda in qualifying, had a good qualifying, didn't get through to Q3, but you know was much better than he normally is, and he ended up finishing ahead of Tsunoda after Tsunoda slid off in the wet conditions. You know, it's a results business, and the main way you get judged is on beating your teammate, and he was able to do that. So having been Nick's teammate before and known him for a long time, I know how good he is, and I think he definitely deserves to be in Formula One, and a few more performances like this and his place will be cemented. So Max Verstappen obviously looking as well dominant as he has been all year, to be perfectly honest with you. Obviously not long for the teams now. We go straight to Barcelona this week, which is great for us race fans. We don't have a weekend off. I think Barcelona is going to be much of the same really with Red Bull dominance. I think it'll be very hard for anyone to stop them there, especially at Barcelona, because the teams do so much testing there and they know the track so well. Everyone is so well prepared there. You normally see at Barcelona the actual true pecking order of the cars. And honestly, I can't see Red Bull being touched there. Obviously, Alonso's home race, home crowd in his favour. We all know how much support he gets there. And I was at the Spanish Grand Prix last year, and it's absolutely incredible. The support that he has is out of this world. But honestly, when you're in the car, you put your helmet on. Whether you're at home or not at home, you always drive as fast as you can. And I think it will still be very, very hard for him to beat Verstappen. I think a few things to start looking out for, as I said before Monaco in the preview, I think Sainz is starting to come under a little bit of pressure. So in terms of Perez, will he be able to rekindle his old form? And Monaco was just a botch weekend. It'll be interesting to see what happens with Stroll. And yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Barcelona, especially with the new layout, with the two high-speed last corners now, very, very heavy circuit on tyre degradation, especially the front left, because the surface is very, very abrasive. So we could see some interesting strategies. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you're looking forward to Barcelona as much as I am. We'll be having the watch along on Track GP. Don't forget to like, comment, share and subscribe to keep up to date with all the F1 news that we can bring you. And yeah, I hope you have a good week and look forward to Barcelona.